Physical retail is dying. A statement which I'm sure goes without saying. So why then am I, and many others, fascinated with what remains of its legacy? Together, let's explore the liminal world of dead malls, a phenomenon accelerated by the internet age, but inextricably linked to a time before the World Wide Web. Back in October, I visited a mall which I knew was greatly struggling in order to take some photographs for the first video I made on the channel. The last time I had been there were only a handful of shops open, and the food court was long abandoned. This time, I was met with this. The mall was gone. Entrances were blocked, escalators turned off, and a construction company had moved in. I felt a pang of sadness as I realised that I would never again experience this place as it was in years gone by. Before leaving, I took a few moments to appreciate the liminal atmosphere of the spaces that remained accessible, reflecting on the absurdity of a place designed around people, now that the crowds had left. I deeply appreciate liminal spaces and their truly unique atmosphere. I champion the disquieting, obscure, and eerie, the spaces that lie in between what was and what will be. Dead malls are the epitomal liminal space, no longer fulfilling their role as a useful and often beautiful shopping destination, but not yet consigned to become something else. Be that a pile of dust and rubble if they're unlucky, or an office space or leisure facility if fortune favours them. There they sit, like ancient ruins, clinging to life, the only people visiting, tourists who, like me, appreciate their decayed beauty. A combination of an oversaturated market and the mass adoption of online shopping caused the decline and eventual death of many malls, or shopping centres as we call them in the UK, including the one I visited, Eldon Garden in central Newcastle. At the height of the suburban mall's popularity in the 1980s, there were an estimated 2,500 of them across the United States. Today, that number has reduced to somewhere around the 1,000 mark. 1,500 structures where countless memories were made by millions of people simply removed from the local communities that relied on them for their shopping needs. Until they didn't. From the 1970s onwards, malls became a part of modern social culture, providing what's known as a third place, a public space outside of the home and outside of work, a space to meet friends, eat, watch a film, and of course, shop. These air-conditioned, accessible and friendly places offered an ideal destination for a day out spent with family, full of shops and services that likely weren't available anywhere else locally. Complete with dramatic modernist architecture and my personal favourite feature of any mall, fountains, these welcoming spaces became the norm across much of Europe and America and became part of the public consciousness, referenced in TV, film, music and literature. Perhaps humanity had reached the zenith of convenience in creating these perfect bubbles of pure amenity. It's no wonder then that people feel a strong, nostalgic connection to malls and mall culture. Perhaps your first date took place there in the 70s. You took your kids to the photography studio for a portrait in the 80s. Maybe you bought a prom outfit there in the 90s and went back to pick a wedding dress in the 2000s. Maybe the last time you were there, you thought nothing of it and simply went about your business, ignoring the decreasing amount of units with tenants, not knowing that soon the shutters would come down for a final time. Nostalgia is often a key ingredient in liminality. The sense of loss feeding the sense of eeriness felt in a place. This space was once the grand vision of an architect who intended it to be filled with life, welcoming thousands of visitors a day. Now, silent and empty. An aimless ghost ship. When visiting a place like this, it's hard not to compare what is with what was and what could have been. One of the most well-known dead malls is Century 3, a late 1970s masterpiece of retail architecture. Bold, modernist, and complete with foliage, fountains, and local art, Century 3 was the third biggest mall in the world when it opened in 1979. The mall was prosperous during the 1980s and much of the 1990s, although it began to face problems when nearby developments, such as the waterfront, a massive, open-air shopping park merely 7 miles away, opened in 1999, expanding over the years to rival Century 3 in terms of retail space. Century 3 was bought by Simon Property Group in 1996, who gave the mall an $8 million facelift, and in doing so, removed original features, thus damaging the character of the building and alienating those who grew up appreciating the mall's design. In the following years, the mall declined further. Stores began to close, exacerbated by the 2008 financial crash and the mass adoption of online retail sites like Amazon. One of the main fountains was drained and filled in by 2009, while areas of the mall were cordoned off and made inaccessible to the public. Its estimated value plummeted and the occupancy rate was only at 40% by 2015, with the property eventually closing in 2019 due to the poor state of the building. After suffering vandalism in the following years, demolition began in 2024 and will continue until 2026. The surreal photographs taken during Century 3's later years are incredibly poignant and extremely liminal. Even though I've never been to Pittsburgh, I feel a great sadness seeing the decay and eventual death of this once thriving place. Of course, Century 3 is not a unique case. Thousands of other malls have fallen victim to this same pattern of decline and eventual death. Rolling Acres in Akron, Ohio, was another titan of mid-century retail design. At the center of its 150 stores stood the Court of the 12 Trees, decorated with an uber 1970s orange modernist fountain, flanked by 12 fig trees. The care, attention to detail, and dedication to sheer whimsy that architects put into malls between the 1970s and 1990s was truly something special. There purely to aesthetically please visitors. Something that has been mostly stripped from the lucky malls that still operate today. Again, after starting to struggle in the mid-90s and being further affected by the faltering economy of the mid to late 2000s, plus the increased stress caused by the rise of e-commerce, Rolling Acres closed its doors and was demolished in 2017. The ultimate irony was to follow. The site is now home to an Amazon distribution center. As I said, even malls that are still in operation have lost much of their character over the years. A tendency to remove original features and modernize older properties in the 2000s and early 2010s has soured many people in local communities. Back where we started in the UK, across the river from the now dead Eldon Garden, lies another large shopping centre. In fact, the second largest shopping centre in Europe. When it opened in 1986, this world-class mall was full of lush greenery, water features, and independent eateries, and was divided into villages with faux cobbled streets and atmospheric mock Mediterranean architecture. The centre even featured Europe's largest indoor amusement park, complete with a roller coaster, pirate ship, waltzers, and more. A visit to Gateshead Metrocentre today is entirely divorced from its original vision. All of the greenery is gone. All but one of the village-themed areas has disappeared. All of the water features have been removed, and the Metroland theme park was demolished in 2008 and replaced with a cinema and eateries. Essentially, it's a standard clinical white tiled shopping mall with no hint of fun. It survives because it's the only large out-of-town shopping centre in the northeast of England and still enjoys an 85% occupancy rate. Now imagine that there were 5 other malls within a 15-mile radius of Gateshead Metrocentre. I don't think it would be enjoying such continued success if it had direct competition like many of the dead malls in the US. Reading comments on any forum by local people tells a tale of longing for the days when visiting was an event for the family, with something to interest everyone, even if it was just simply appreciating the interesting scenery and theming inside. Those who grew up with this mall are now comparing its heyday to its current state, mourning the loss of their childhood simultaneously with the place that meant so much to them growing up. Walking around, you'd be forgiven for mistaking some of the less frequented areas for a mall that was on its knees. The concept of the mall is so ubiquitous, so ingrained in modern culture, such a symbol of human progress, such a lived experience for anyone and everyone who grew up any time in the last 60 years, that it's incredibly easy to relate to an image of one in a state of decay. Even though there's a very high chance you've never been to the mall in question, you've certainly visited one like it. And I believe this built-in nostalgia, this ready-made desire to return to a more innocent time, is what puts a liminal mall above other liminal spaces in terms of sheer, overwhelming emotional response. To see something once so novel and full of life become an empty shell is inherently disquieting. Add to that the memories made and life lived inside the mall, you've got a perfect liminal storm. I was surprised reading people's comments, be it on the Dead Mall subreddit, on local forums, or newspapers covering a mall's closure, that the main focus of their sentimental recollections wasn't really on the retail aspect of the space. People were mourning the loss of the third place, the place to just have a laugh with friends as a teenager and annoy a Blart-esque mall cop. The place to meet after work for a meal or catch the latest blockbuster while parents shopped. The mall meant more than just a collection of stores and services. For many people, it was a social environment, now largely consigned to a distant memory. Sitting there in liminal splendour while we enjoy the convenience of next day shipping, until one day it will be dust. My advice to you? Visit your local mall while you still can. If you're lucky, it might have been left untouched by the hands of modernisation over the years. The fountain might even still be running and the plants thriving under the skylights. Admire the thought and care that went into the design of the building and bask in the quiet liminality of your surroundings. If you're still watching, thank you very much for your time spent with me today. And if you've enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, or if you're feeling super extra generous, you could hit subscribe and check out my other content. I certainly have enjoyed researching and creating this video.